They called her paranoid. They called her dangerous. They said she needed help. But what if the real madness was the lie they created? As Jordan is dragged toward forced hospitalization, her world begins to collapse until one ally steps in with a dangerous plan: hidden recordings, secret meetings, and a desperate race against time. The truth is closer than anyone realizes.
My husband's text came at 9:47 this morning. It said, "Happy anniversary, honey. I am swamped at work, but I cannot wait for tonight. Love you." I was sitting in my restaurant office when I glanced out the window. My whole world came crashing down. He was standing right there kissing a woman with fiery red hair like it was nothing. I shot up from my chair to confront them, but a stranger stepped in my way and whispered, "Don't. The real story is just starting." Thank you for joining me. If this story resonates with you, please comment and share where you are from. This story is a work of fiction, but the lessons are genuine. It all began on a grim Wednesday, February 14th, 2024, our second wedding anniversary. I arrived at my restaurant, Rose's Kitchen, at 7:30 in the morning. I wanted to cook a special meal to remind my husband of our love. My office was filled with the warm scent of yesterday's baking. I watched Carmen through the window as she prepared for lunch. The morning sun lit up the empty dining room. I was going to cook saffron risotto, Jake's absolute favorite. It was the dish I made for him on our first date 5 years ago. I was getting the ingredients ready when my phone vibrated at 9:47. It was a text from Jake. "Happy anniversary, honey. Work is crazy, but I'm excited for tonight." He signed it, "Love you." For a brief second, I felt a rush of hope. I thought maybe things would be all right, despite our recent problems. As I started to type a reply, something caught my eye. It was a navy blue jacket and a familiar stance that made my heart jump. I looked up and saw him at a corner table just 30 feet away. I froze, watching him from inside my office. There was Jake inside Rose's Kitchen, my restaurant, the business that was my whole life. He was in the one place he claimed he could not be. He wore the navy coat I bought him for Christmas. He looked so relaxed, completely unaware I was watching. And he was not alone. A woman with long red hair sat across from him. She leaned in, her hand resting on his arm. Then she stood, walked to his side, and put her arms around him. It was a deep, passionate kiss, not just a simple greeting. It was a lover's kiss. He raised his hand to her cheek the same way he used to touch mine. My phone slipped from my fingers and hit the desk. The screen was still lit up with his loving text about being at work. The moment stretched on and on. My mind could not accept what my eyes were seeing. My mind raced, trying to find another explanation. It could not be him. I was tired and my eyes were deceiving me. Maybe this was some kind of bizarre surprise, but I knew that coat, I knew that posture. I knew the gentle way he cupped a person's face because he had done it to me 1,000 times. There was no mistake. I was ready to storm out there and cause a scene. My hand was on the doorknob, my body shaking with rage when a hand touched my arm. I whipped around, my heart pounding in my chest. A woman I had not seen in 4 years stood before me. It was an old friend, Detective Sarah Morgan. She was in regular clothes, but her police badge was on her belt. Her gaze was intense, and her calmness stopped me cold. "Wait," she said, her voice low but firm. "Do not go out there, Zoe. There is something bigger going on." Her grip was gentle but strong enough to keep me from running out and screaming. I just stared at her, completely stunned. Tears streamed down my cheeks and my body trembled. "Sarah, what is going on? I do not understand," I managed to say. "I was just getting a coffee," she said, glancing toward the dining room. "I come here sometimes on my day off. I saw him come in about 20 minutes ago. I saw the kiss and then I saw you. I knew exactly what you planned to do." She gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Zoe, if you face him right now, you will just tip him off. You will lose the chance to learn the truth. Trust me, a man this shameless is hiding much more than an affair." "I need to know," I whispered, my voice breaking. Sarah's eyes softened. "Then you need to go home," she instructed. "Go home this instant while he thinks you are still working. Check his desk, his laptop, everything. Find your evidence. Take pictures of everything. Make copies and then call me." She handed me her card. "If you confront him now, he will just lie. He will make you feel like you are losing your mind and cover his tracks. Do not let him do that." I looked out the window one last time. Jake was getting up, dropping a $20 bill on the table. The woman was already gone. Sarah was right. A confrontation would solve nothing, but going home might give me the answers I needed. "Okay," I breathed. Sarah squeezed my shoulder again. Be smart about this, Zoe. Be safe and tell me what you discover. The moment Jake walked out at 9:52, I grabbed my things. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I did not even say goodbye to Carmen. I left a pot simmering on the stove. I ran out the back, my apron still on, into the chilly rain. The 12-minute drive home took me only 8. When I arrived, Jake's car was in the driveway. I unlocked the door to our quiet, normal-looking house, but I knew that normal was gone forever. I walked into Jake's home office. The door was ajar. His desk was covered in documents. Right on top was a divorce petition. It named Jake Michael Carson as the petitioner and me, Zoe Maria Martinez, as the respondent. It was all filled out and signed in blue ink by him. The only empty space was the line for my signature. Beneath it was a business appraisal for Rose's Kitchen, valued at $2.8 million. I found a printed email from Marcus Brennan from November 3rd, 2023. It read, Jake, we can close the deal as soon as you get her power of attorney. The $2.8 million offer stands. Get her signature before October 28th. The plan was to wire the money to an offshore account. Another email from February 11th mentioned the red-haired woman was in charge of the emotional manipulation. At the very bottom, I saw a printed text message. The name of the sender made my blood turn to ice. It was from Maya, my sister. The woman with red hair was my own sister. The date was February 14th, 2024. The clock read 2 in the afternoon. I had been sitting there for nearly 3 hours just looking at the papers. I was trying to understand any piece of this nightmare. Jake was gone. His car was no longer in the driveway. He was still with her. He was with Maya. As I sat there, I realized I did not know my husband or my sister at all. The printed text message felt like it was staring at me. I kept reading it, wishing it was a mistake, a different Maya, but it was her phone number. The profile picture was from our family Christmas party. My little sister, the one I raised after our mom died, the one who crawled into my bed when she was scared. I needed to know the whole story. I had to see how far this treachery went. I got up and returned to Jake's office. His laptop was on the desk. I had never opened it before. He always claimed it was just for work, full of things that would bore me, and I believed him. I believed every word he said. My hands were no longer shaking. Anger has a way of clearing your head, burning off the shock, and leaving you with cold determination. I lifted the lid of the laptop. A password screen appeared. I entered the code he used for everything from our streaming service to our joint bank account. The password was 2022, the year of our wedding, the year he swore he would love me forever. The screen unlocked. I was in. The desktop was neat with just a few folders. I opened his email. There were hundreds of messages. I scrolled through the subjects until one jumped out at me. It was from Marcus Brennan at Cascade Dining Group. I clicked on it. The email chain went back to October 10th, 2023. It read, Jake, once you have power of attorney for Rose's Kitchen, we can close in 72 hours. The $2.8 million is ready. Just make sure she signs without any trouble. Another message from November 3rd, 2023, set a 90-day deadline. It said, make sure she is vulnerable enough to sign by then. Use anything you can, emotional pressure, a health scare. The red-haired contact will help with that side of things. She is on board. The red-haired contact, my heart hammered in my chest. I kept scrolling. An email from January 22nd, 2024 said, your contact is confirmed. M is ready to proceed. She will keep Zoe distracted and off balance. Once the document is signed, you give us the business. Then we send the $2.8 million to your Cayman Islands account, number 847392. I kept scrolling. An email from January 22nd, 2024 said, your contact is confirmed. M is ready to proceed. She will keep Zoe distracted and off balance. Once the document is signed, you give us the business. Then we send the $2.8 million to your Cayman Islands account, number 847392. Then you can start over with M in Seattle. Maya's Table will launch in the third quarter of 2024. Congratulations. The words blurred my vision. Maya's Table. They were giving my sister a restaurant with my name. It was the dream Jake and I had planned together. We had imagined it on our honeymoon. I had filled my cookbooks with drawings for it. He was handing her my dreams. He was stealing my whole life. I selected the personal folder. Inside was another folder labeled M. I clicked it, and dozens of pictures appeared. They showed Jake and Maya in Seattle. They were at Cannon Beach, the very spot he asked me to marry him 3 years ago. In one photo, her hand rested on his chest as he kissed her neck. The photos went back 18 months, a full year and a half. Their affair had been going on that long. The deceit felt like it was suffocating me. I opened his messages. His conversation with Maya was right at the top. I found their messages from just last night, February 13th, 2024, at 11:47 p.m. Maya typed, "Tomorrow is the anniversary with her, isn't it? Are you sure you can go through with this?" Jake answered, "Do not worry, baby. I will send her a sweet text in the morning so she stays quiet. This will all be finished by October. It will just be us, Maya's table, and a baby. That is our future." Maya replied, "I want to have our baby soon, Jake. You have to promise." Jake's last message was, "I promise you, baby, soon." I slammed the laptop shut, making the entire desk shake. My hands were trembling, not from sadness, but with a burning rage. The betrayal cut so deep it felt like my bones were splintering. Maya wanted a baby with him. My own sister wanted to have my husband's child. She was trying to take the life that I thought belonged to me. And Jake was playing us both. He promised me our future while he was secretly trying to take my family's company. He promised her a life that was built on nothing but deception. But a different phrase from Marcus Brennan's email echoed in my head. Make sure she is weak enough to sign. Emotional strain, health issues, whatever it takes, health issues. I had been feeling sick since November. The queasiness, the tiredness, the sharp pains in my stomach each morning. I told myself it was just stress. I thought it was the burden of running the restaurant. But what if it was not stress at all? What if Jake was the one making me sick? My stomach twisted into a painful knot. I ran to the bathroom, barely reaching the toilet before I got sick, a burning acid rising in my throat. As I sat up, shaking and crying, I saw it on the counter. Jake's travel toiletries bag was open. Right next to his razor sat a small dark bottle. My hand shook as I reached for it. The label read Ipecac syrup, for use to induce vomiting after poisoning. The expiration date was March of 2025. The bottle was only half full. My thoughts raced while I looked at it. Ipecac. This was why I had been feeling so unwell. Jake was poisoning me, not enough to end my life, just enough to keep me weak and confused. He wanted me to be so worn down that I would sign any document just to make it stop, make sure she's weak enough to sign. Oh my goodness. I carried the bottle back to the office and opened the laptop one more time. I went to his search history and I found it. Searches from 3 months ago. How to make someone nauseous without being caught. Oregon laws for power of attorney. Can a business sale under pressure be reversed? He had planned everything. He had thought of every single detail. And Maya, my own flesh and blood, was his partner in it. I have no idea how long I sat there as the broken pieces of my life finally started to fit together, each new piece a sharper pain. But when I finally closed the laptop and stood to watch the rain fall, I was not crying anymore. My hands were steady. I felt a cold, clear focus. Jake and Maya think they can just take my world. They are so wrong. Because I finally see the truth. My grandmother Rosa used to say that knowledge is the sharpest tool you have. Now I had to learn how to wield it. First, I needed to prove what Jake was adding to my coffee. I needed undeniable evidence. It was February 15th, 2024. A Thursday, just after 6:30 in the morning in our kitchen. I had been awake the entire night. Each time I shut my eyes, I saw that little brown bottle. Half of the Ipecac syrup was already used. Lying there in the dark, listening to Jake's even breathing, I pictured him smiling every morning as he added poison to my drink. He had come home late after 11. I heard his keys and then his quiet steps on the staircase. I kept my eyes closed and my breathing regular, acting as though I was asleep. He slipped into bed as if it were a normal night, not like he had just been with my sister scheming to destroy my life. I wanted to scream at him, I wanted to hurl the bottle at his head and demand to know why, but I stayed perfectly still. To win this, I had to be more clever. I needed solid proof. So when the alarm rang at 6:30, I got up from bed. I followed my usual morning habits. I brushed my teeth, tied my hair up, and pulled on an old Portland Trailblazers sweatshirt. I walked into the kitchen as if it were any other Thursday. Jake was already there in his gray shirt and sweatpants, waiting as the coffee maker finished its cycle. He turned around with the same charming smile that made me fall in love with him 5 years ago. "Morning, babe," he said, pretending he was not trying to ruin my life. "Morning," I answered, my voice even. I stood in the doorway, my arms crossed, and I watched him. He reached for two mugs from the cupboard. They were the ones we bought at the Hood River Farmers Market, with little strawberries painted on them. He filled each one with coffee, with steam rising from the cups. Then he moved to the refrigerator to get my almond milk. While he did that, his other hand dipped into the pocket of his sweatpants. It was a quick motion, just long enough to grab a small object. It was the same little brown bottle I discovered. My stomach tightened, but I did not move. I kept my expression neutral and just observed. He twisted the cap off and held it over my mug. A couple of clear drops landed in my coffee. He twisted the cap back on, put the bottle in his pocket, and grabbed the milk like nothing had occurred. The whole thing took less than 5 seconds. A blink would have made me miss it. He stirred both of our coffees with a spoon, the metal making a light tapping noise. Then he carried my coffee over to me, wearing that same easy smile. Here you go, sweetheart, a little extra almond milk, just how you like it. I accepted the mug, my fingers lightly touching his. My hands were completely still. I refused to let them tremble. Thank you, I said. I brought the mug toward my mouth, faking a small sip. I noticed the smell right away. It was a strong, bitter coffee, but there was another odor underneath. It was a chemical scent. Something was very wrong. I let the liquid barely touch my tongue before I put the mug down. It is perfect, I lied. Jake was leaning on the counter, drinking his own coffee while looking at his phone. He was probably sending a text to Maya, working on their next plan. I watched him from over the edge of my cup, pretending to drink, feeling my heart turn to ice. For 3 months, the man I had married and trusted has been giving me poison every single day. I realize now it began in November. A heavy fatigue and a strange illness had taken over. Sharp, sudden stomach pains would strike at the restaurant, making me bend over and hope I would not get sick in front of my staff. I was certain that something was seriously wrong with me. I assumed it was stress or maybe an ulcer or a stomach virus that would not go away. I even visited my doctor twice. He performed tests but could not find anything wrong. He suggested it might be anxiety and told me I should try to relax. The whole time it was Jake. He was purposefully making me just sick enough to be controlled. Zoe, are you okay? Jake's voice broke into my thoughts, making me flinch. I noticed he was watching me, his head tilted in a show of false worry. You seem so tired. I am fine, I told him. I just did not get a good night's sleep. You have been saying that quite often, he noted, placing his mug down. He stepped towards me and reached up to tuck a loose strand of my hair back. His touch made my skin crawl. Maybe you should take today off from work. Carmen is able to manage the restaurant. You should really get some rest. More rest, to make me even weaker, to make me even more manageable for him. Maybe so, I said, forcing a smile to my lips. I will consider it. He leaned in and kissed my forehead. It was a soft, tender kiss, just like the one he gave me at our wedding. I love you, Zoe, he whispered. For a brief moment, his acting almost convinced me. Almost. But then he picked up his keys from the kitchen counter and headed for the door. I have a meeting early this morning. I will be home tonight. Okay. Okay, I repeated. The door clicked shut after he left. I did not move at all until I heard his car leave the driveway. Then I sprang into action. I grabbed a small glass spice container from the cupboard and poured my coffee into it, making sure to get every last bit. I tightened the lid, wiped the container, and hid it deep inside my purse. After that, I poured Jake's leftover coffee into the sink, rinsed out both of the mugs, and placed them into the dishwasher. I held onto the counter for a second, just trying to breathe. My hands were shaking now, not from fright, but from an overwhelming fury. For 3 entire months, he had been doing this to me, and I never knew a thing. He had me completely fooled. But now my eyes were open, and I was going to get my proof. I grabbed my phone and searched for a nearby medical lab. One name appeared with 4.7 stars, Providence Medical Lab. They opened at 8 o'clock, just a 20-minute drive away. I quickly texted my manager, Carmen. Could you open the restaurant for me? I have a doctor's appointment and should be there by noon. Her reply was instant. Of course, dear. Is everything all right? I stared at her message. Nothing was all right, but I hoped it would be soon. Yes, I typed back. It is just a routine checkup. I put my phone down, took my purse with the coffee sample hidden inside, and walked out the door. If my husband Jake was poisoning me, I had to find out what he was using. I needed undeniable proof, the kind that would be accepted in a court of law. This was bigger than just me. It involved Rose's kitchen, my grandmother's entire legacy, and everything Jake and my sister Maya were trying to take. I refused to let them succeed. On Friday, February 16th, just after 10:15 in the morning, I arrived at the Providence Medical Lab in Portland. For 5 minutes, I sat in my parked car with the engine off, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I stared at the building's glass doors, afraid they would swallow me. In my purse was a paper bag holding a jar of yesterday's coffee, the coffee Jake had made, the coffee I saw him tamper with. I had told Carmen I was running a quick errand before work. I explained I was meeting a supplier across town about an order. She didn't press for details. Carmen was never one to pry. She simply said, "Take your time." I felt a wave of relief that she trusted me. I hadn't slept at all the night before. I just laid there next to Jake, listening to his steady breathing. I wondered how he could rest so easily after his betrayal, after plotting with my own sister to ruin me, after spending 3 months carefully poisoning my morning coffee. He made coffee this morning just like always. He had the same routine, the same warm smile, and gave me the same kiss before he left for work. I didn't drink any of it. The moment he was gone, I poured it all down the drain. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel sick by 9 in the morning. There were no stomach cramps and no dizziness. I felt completely normal. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty it was the coffee. It had been the coffee all along. I grabbed my purse, took a deep breath, and stepped out of my car. The air was cold and wet, a classic Portland day in February. It was a kind of chill that sinks deep into your bones. I crossed the lot, went through the automatic glass doors, and entered the waiting room. The place was incredibly clean and smelled of disinfectant and a lavender scent that made me feel queasy. A receptionist behind a glass partition smiled at me. "Good morning. How may I help you?" I kept my voice even and said, "I need to ask about a toxicology test for a liquid." Her smile faltered slightly. "Please wait one moment." She made a brief, quiet phone call and then nodded. "Dr. Bennett will see you shortly. You can have a seat." I chose a plastic chair by the window, holding my purse tightly in my lap. The jar inside felt incredibly heavy. Other people were waiting. An older man was using a cane. A young woman was looking at her phone. A mother was soothing her crying child. They were just ordinary people leading ordinary lives. I wondered if any of them were there because their husband was trying to murder them. I seriously doubted it. After about 10 minutes that felt like an hour, a door opened. A woman in a white lab coat came out. She looked to be in her early 40s with dark hair in a bun and kind eyes. "Zoe Martinez," she called. I got to my feet. "That is me." "I am Dr. Rachel Bennett," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "Please come with me." I followed her down a hallway into a small office. She motioned for me to sit, then closed the door and sat across from me at her desk. "So," she began in a gentle tone, "the receptionist said you need a toxicology screen for a liquid. Could you tell me more about it?" I took the jar from my purse and placed it on the desk. A dark, oily layer had formed on top of the coffee. "I need to know what is in this," I said. "Anything that doesn't belong, like poison, medicine, or some kind of chemical." Dr. Bennett picked up the jar and examined it against the light. "And where did this sample come from?" she asked. I paused for a moment. "My husband made it for me yesterday morning." Our eyes met and a heavy silence filled the room. "And you are worried because I've been so sick," I said, the words spilling out. "For 3 months, I have had constant nausea, vomiting, and terrible stomach pains. My doctor ran tests but couldn't find anything. But yesterday, I did not drink the coffee he made, and today I feel perfectly fine. I have no symptoms at all." Dr. Bennett put the jar down. Her face was calm, but her eyes showed deep concern. "Zoe, I need to ask, do you feel safe at home?" The question hung in the air. "Not anymore," I whispered. "But I can't do anything without proof, real legal proof. That is why I came here." She nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on me. "I see. We can perform a full toxicology panel on this. It will check for common poisons, prescription medication, and various chemical substances. How much time will that take?" 72 hours, she replied. "We will contact you as soon as we get the results." "And can I use this in court?" "Yes, if you pursue legal action, this laboratory is fully certified. Our findings are admissible in court." She paused. "Zoe, if you feel you are in immediate danger—" "I am not," I interrupted. "Not at the moment. He has no idea that I know. And I must keep it that way until I have what I need to stop him." Dr. Bennett observed me for a moment, then nodded. "Understood. The test is $127.50. We can submit it to your insurance if—" "No," I said, pulling out my wallet. "I used an old credit card of my mother's that I saved for emergencies. I will pay with this. Please do not bill my insurance." She didn't question my request. She simply processed the payment and gave me the receipt. She said they would call on Monday afternoon. She also told me to call 911 or her personal number if I felt unsafe. She gave me her business card. I put the card and receipt away. I thanked her sincerely. As she walked me out, she placed a hand on my shoulder. "Please be safe, Zoe." Back in my car, the cold air felt sharp on my face. I sat for a moment, my hands trembling. It was finally done. In 3 days, I would know what Jake had been putting in my coffee. With that proof, I could figure out my next move. I started the car and headed to Rose's kitchen. On the way, I realized something. I felt so much better today. My mind was clear, my stomach was calm, my head didn't hurt. I felt like myself again after months of being sick. That thought was almost as terrifying as the poison itself. It meant Jake's plan had been working. He was slowly breaking me down piece by piece without me even knowing, but now my eyes were open 72 hours. I just had to wait 72 hours to learn if my husband was trying to kill me. Then I would know how to stop him for good. It was Monday, February 19th, and I was at Rose's kitchen. I was getting everything ready for the dinner crowd when my phone vibrated in my pocket. I dried my hands and checked the screen. It was an unknown Portland number. A knot of fear tightened in my chest. I went to the back office to answer it. Hello? Zoe, this is Dr. Rachel Bennett from Providence Medical Lab. Her voice was steady, but I heard an urgent tone just beneath it. Can you come to the clinic now? I have your test results and I think we should discuss them in person. My stomach plunged. Did you did you find something? Yes, she said softly. And I believe you will want to see this as soon as you can. I told Carmen I had to leave for an hour. I grabbed my things and was driving before I could even process it. The 12-minute drive felt like it took hours. My hands gripped the wheel as my thoughts raced. They found something. I had proof. When I reached the lab, my heart was beating so fast I could feel it in my throat. Dr. Bennett met me in the same office as before. She stood as I entered, motioned to the chair, and shut the door behind me. A light brown folder sat on the desk. She sat down, opened it, and pushed a lab report toward me. Zoe, she began quietly, the results arrived this morning. I waited to call because I had the lab run the test again. This is extremely serious. I looked down at the paper in front of me. The medical report was a blur of technical words, but one line glowed in yellow. Ipecac syrup was detected, 15 milliliters in a sample of 250 milliliters. My vision swam for a moment. I had to blink to see clearly. Ipecac, I breathed, my voice barely there. That makes you throw up, doesn't it? Dr. Bennett nodded. Yes, it is used to cause vomiting after a poisoning. We do not use it much anymore because it can be dangerous. She explained that a daily dose in a cup of coffee would not kill you quickly. Instead, it would bring on constant sickness, vomiting, tiredness, and stomach pain. I finally met her gaze. For how long? She replied. If you drank this every day for months, it could cause extremely serious long term health issues. The doctor continued, listing the consequences: dehydration, muscle decay, and lasting harm to my digestive system. She paused, then looked right at me. Zoe, someone has been poisoning you intentionally. And from what you have told me, this has been happening for at least 3 months. The room started to spin. I reached for the desk to keep my balance. 3 months. The sickness began in November. The exhaustion, the aches. I blamed it on stress. I told myself it was all in my imagination, but it was Jake. For 3 months, he had smiled at me, kissed me, and handed me my morning coffee, all while he was poisoning me. Zoe, Dr. Bennett said, her voice gentle but strong, you need to report this to the police immediately. This is a crime. The person responsible is guilty of assault and maybe even attempted murder. You are not safe. I shook my head. No, I cannot. Why not? She asked. Because this is not enough, I said, tapping the report. I need to know his whole plan. If I go to the police now, he will just deny it. He will say I am crazy or that I poisoned myself to frame him. He is clever. He has a lot of money and a team of lawyers. He is already trying to take everything from me. Dr. Bennett's expression turned grim. Zoe, if he is poisoning you, he could get more dangerous. I know, I answered calmly. But I am not drinking his coffee anymore. I stopped 4 days ago. He has no idea that I know, I continued. I have to use that advantage to gather enough proof to stop him completely. She looked at me for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. Okay, but you must promise me something. If you feel you are in any danger, you will call 911 or me. She took out a card and wrote a number on the back. This is my personal cell. Call me anytime. I accepted the card, folded the report, and slipped them into my purse. Thank you, Dr. Bennett, for everything. At the door, she placed a hand on my shoulder. Please be careful, Zoe, she said. I walked to my car, the truth in my purse feeling heavy as a stone. This was the proof of what Jake had been doing, the proof that he was making me sick and weak, hoping I would just sign away Rose's kitchen. Make sure she is weak enough to sign. That was the phrase from the email Marcus Brennan sent, and that is what Jake did. He poisoned me. Every morning for 3 months, he looked me in the eyes as he handed me poison. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, just staring. The anger I had held back for 5 days turned into cold determination. Jake thinks he is in control. He thinks he has already won, but he is mistaken because I have proof. Real, documented, lab confirmed evidence, and that changes the entire game. I started the car, my mind already planning my next move. Jake does not just want the restaurant, he wants to get rid of me, and my own sister Maya is helping him. But they both made a gigantic mistake. They underestimated me completely. They thought I was too sick and broken to put up a fight. They never guessed I would find the bottle. They never thought I would get the coffee tested. And they certainly never imagined I had a secret weapon of my own. But I do. My grandmother made sure of it. Abuela Rosa left me more than just the restaurant. She left me something else, something that Jake and Maya and Marcus Brennan know nothing about. It is something I have not laid a finger on in 5 years since the day she gave it to me, but I believe now is the perfect time to use it. Jake tried to make me weak. He tried to shatter my spirit, but he is about to find out that I am the one with all the power now. By the time he understands what is going on, it will be much too late. It is Tuesday evening, February 20th, a little past 7. I am standing in the doorway of Abuela Rosa's old bedroom. She passed away 5 years ago, and I have hardly been in this room since. The house is completely still. Jake sent a text an hour ago saying he was working late, which probably means he is with Maya. I do not care. Let him dig his own grave. I came here tonight for a sense of safety, to be in a place that reminded me of her. I can still smell a faint trace of her perfume, Chanel number 5. It was the one small luxury she allowed herself. The walls are covered with old photos. There is a picture of Rose's kitchen when it was just a small shop on Division Street. There is Abuela in her apron, a smudge of flour on her cheek, smiling, and there is a photo of me as a little girl perched on a stool next to her learning to knead dough. I miss her so much it hurts. I wish she was here to tell me what to do. She always knew the right thing to do. I walked to the old wooden dresser she had found at a garage sale in 1979. She had refinished it by hand. Sitting on top, in a place of honor, is her recipe book. This is not the version they sold at the restaurant. This one is her personal journal, bound in leather, now 45 years old. The cover felt soft and worn from so many years of her touch. Inside, her beautiful flowing handwriting filled the pages with all her famous recipes. Mole negro, tamales oaxaqueños. I had looked through it many times, but I could never bring myself to cook from it. It always felt too final, like saying goodbye all over again. But tonight I reached for it. I'm not sure why. Maybe I just needed to feel her presence. Maybe I needed to remember that I come from a long line of very strong women. I lifted the book gently and sat on the bed. The leather spine was cracked and a few stitches were loose. As I held it, a corner of the cover caught my sleeve and I heard a quiet tearing noise. My heart dropped. Oh no, please do not let it be damaged. I looked closer. The leather on the inside cover had pulled away, showing something underneath. It was not cardboard like I expected. It was paper. I placed the book on my lap and carefully pulled back more of the torn leather. There, tucked away in a secret pocket, were 3 folded pieces of paper. My hands were shaking as I took them out. The first was a letter, written in blue ink in my abuela's hand. I carefully unfolded it, smoothed out the wrinkles, and began to read. My dearest granddaughter Zoe, if you are reading this, it means I have passed on. It also means a betrayal has taken place. I always worried this day might arrive. Your grandfather and I put our whole lives into Rose's kitchen, but our success came with a cost. I know that achievement can make others dangerously jealous, so I made a plan to protect you after I was gone. I have established a trust fund for you, my dear, worth $850,000. The account is at Wells Fargo Bank under my name. It is managed by my lawyer, Benjamin Hartley. He is a dear friend of 40 years who I trust completely. The fund has one very important rule. It can only be accessed with proof that someone is trying to steal Rose's kitchen from you. If you are reading this letter, I know you now have that proof. You must contact Benjamin. Show him everything you have found. He will help you get the money. Use it to protect yourself and to save our restaurant. This is your protection now, Zoe. Please use it with care. My love for you will last forever. Abuela Rosa. The words became blurry as I read. Warm tears rolled down my face and I did not stop them. She had known this could happen. She knew I might need help and she made sure I would have it. Even after all this time, she is still watching over me. I wiped my eyes and looked at the next paper she had left behind. The first document was an official certificate from Wells Fargo Bank issued a decade ago in January 2015. It detailed the Rosa Martinez Family Trust Fund and its principal value of $850,000. The next paper was a business card for an attorney named Benjamin Hartley. A phone number was printed right below his name. I sat there for a long while, holding her letter and the certificate in my hands. $850,000. That was more than enough money for the best lawyers in Portland. It was enough to take on Jake and Marcus Brennan. It was enough to rescue my grandmother's dream. but it also confirmed she believed in me to protect her legacy. She knew I would not give up. I folded the letter with care and placed it back inside the book with the papers. I got up and walked to the window, gazing down at the street. The city lights began to flicker on, creating long shadows on the sidewalk. Somewhere in the city, Jake was with Maya, convinced he had already won. He assumes I am too defeated and frightened to put up a fight. He is mistaken. My grandmother gave me the means to protect myself. Now it is time to use them. In the morning, I will call Benjamin Hartley. I will show him the lab report, the emails, and the fake signatures. I will lay out everything. Then I will access the trust fund, and my fight will truly start. It was Wednesday, February 21st, shortly after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when I walked into the law firm of Hartley and Associates on 3rd Avenue. The office was located in an old brick building from before the war, featuring tall ceilings and ornate molding. The air carried the scent of old leather books and wood polish. A receptionist with silver hair offered a warm smile. "You must be Zoe Martinez. Mr. Hartley is waiting for you." She guided me down a hall adorned with framed diplomas and vintage photographs of Portland. My heart was racing. I had made the call that morning, my voice shaking. "My name is Zoe Martinez. My grandmother, Rosa Martinez, suggested I contact Benjamin Hartley. This is incredibly urgent." An appointment was scheduled for 3 o'clock that very afternoon, and there I was, carrying a large envelope in my purse with my grandmother's letter, the report, and every single document. The receptionist paused at a heavy oak door with a brass plaque that read Benjamin Hartley, Esquire. She knocked lightly and then opened it. "Zoe Martinez has arrived." A strong, kind voice replied from inside. "Please show her in." I entered the office, and he stood up from behind his desk to welcome me. Benjamin Hartley looked exactly as I had imagined. He was in his mid-60s, with perfectly styled silver hair, gold-rimmed glasses, and a classic gray suit that gave him an air of dignity. He extended his hand. "Zoe," he said. The way he said my name sounded so natural and familiar that it brought a lump to my throat. "Please, have a seat." I sat in a leather armchair as he settled back into his, resting his hands on the desk. He observed me for a moment with a gentle, sympathetic look. "You look so much like her," he said softly. "Like Rosa. You have her eyes and her spirit." I fought back tears. "Not now." "You must have known each other for a very long time." 40 years, he replied. "She first came to me in 1984, right when Rose's Kitchen was starting. We became dear friends. She was one of the toughest people I've ever met, and she spoke of you constantly. She was so very proud." A sharp ache tightened in my chest. "She mentioned the trust to you?" "Yes, she did," he confirmed, his tone growing more serious. "10 years ago. It was her life savings from 30 years of work, $850,000. She had me promise to keep it a secret even from you unless someone made a move to steal the restaurant." I gave a slow nod. "Someone is trying to." I took the large envelope out of my purse and placed it on his desk. Benjamin opened the envelope and examined every document inside. He started with my grandmother's letter, and I watched his expression harden. He then picked up the report from Providence Medical Lab. His eyes widened when he read the word Ipecac. He looked over the forged divorce documents, followed by the emails from Marcus Brennan. He read each word with great care, his face growing darker with each new page. After he had finished, he set the papers down and looked directly at me. "Zoe," he said, his voice quiet but filled with anger, "this is much more than just fraud. This is attempted murder." "I know," I whispered. "That is why I came here. I need your help." Benjamin leaned forward in his chair. "You have my help, and you also have Rosa's. She was worried that someone might go after you in the restaurant. That's the very reason she set up the trust with that specific condition. It can only be accessed if there is a proof of an attempt to take Rosa's kitchen." He pointed to the documents. "And this is your proof. It is solid, well documented, and cannot be disputed." A wave of profound relief washed over me. "So the funds are accessible?" "Yes," he replied, "but we must move quickly. I am filing an emergency motion with the Multnomah County Court this afternoon. We are going to ask for three things. First, a temporary order that freezes all marital assets, which includes the restaurant. That will stop Jake from being able to sell it. Second, we will request the immediate release of the trust, which will provide you with the money you need. And third, we will demand a formal criminal investigation into Jake Carson for forgery, fraud, and poisoning." My heart began to beat faster. "How much time will that require?" "With an emergency motion and evidence as strong as this, a judge could make a decision within 48 hours. If it gets approved, Jake will be prevented from touching Rose's kitchen, and you will have full access to the $850,000. I exhaled a breath I did not realize I had been holding. And what about the poisoning? Benjamin's face grew very stern. That is a matter for the police. The court can initiate an investigation, but law enforcement will require your full cooperation. Do you know of anyone there that I could call? The name of my high school friend, Detective Sarah Morgan, immediately came to mind. I had not contacted her yet, but now was the time. I do, I replied. Benjamin gave a nod. Good. As soon as we file, Jake will realize something is wrong. He will become nervous. People who are scared can act recklessly. You are going to need someone watching out for you. I will call her, I assured him. He rose to his feet, and so did I. He came around his desk and put a hand gently on my shoulder, just like my grandmother used to. Rosa loved you more than anyone, Zoe. She would be so immensely proud of you right now. The tears returned, and this time I let them fall. I just miss her so much. I know, he said softly, but she is always with you. She lives on through you, through her restaurant, and in this fight that you are on the verge of winning. I left his office 1 hour later, holding a copy of the court petition and with a hearing set for Friday, February 23rd. As I headed to my car, the sun finally pushed through the overcast Portland sky. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a sense of hope. My grandmother had watched over me even after she was gone. She had given me the resources I needed to fight back. And now, with Benjamin's guidance, I was prepared. But Jake was still a major problem. He was a very dangerous man who had to be stopped. He needed to be held accountable for his actions. I took out my phone and scrolled to the name I was searching for, Sarah Morgan. It had been several months since we last spoke, but I knew that if anyone could offer help, it would be her. I pressed the call button. On Saturday morning, February 24th, just after 11, I claimed a booth at Stumptown Coffee Roasters on Southeast Division Street. I ordered a plain black coffee. It had been 10 days since Detective Sarah Morgan had intervened, stopping me from confronting Jake and my sister inside my own restaurant. I was meeting with her because I now had undeniable proof. Just the day before, a judge had approved Benjamin Hartley's emergency motion. Jake was now legally barred from setting foot in Rose's kitchen. The restraining order was active, and my grandmother's trust fund was officially under my control. But a court order was not enough. I needed to see Jake put in jail. That is why I had called Sarah the previous night. Sarah entered the coffee shop at 11:15. She was wearing jeans and a black leather jacket with her badge clipped clearly to her belt. She moved through the busy cafe with the same sharp awareness she had displayed 10 days earlier. She saw me right away and slid into the seat opposite me. Zoe, she started, her voice gentle, how are you managing? I looked her straight in the eye. I am managing because you were there for me that day. If you hadn't stopped me, I would have ruined my entire case. Thank you, Sarah. She gave a slight nod. I am just glad I was able to help. Now, tell me what you have found. I slid a thick manila folder across the table toward her. The reality of the situation was much worse than just an affair. For 3 whole months, Jake had been systematically poisoning me. He was in a conspiracy with a man named Marcus Brennan to seize control of my restaurant, and their scheme went even further than that. I watched Sarah's face change as soon as she opened the folder. Her eyes grew wide when she read the toxicology results. Her jaw clenched as she looked through the emails between Jake and Marcus. Her expression became more serious with every single page she read. The very first document was the lab report. It stated that the coffee sample contained 15 milliliters of ipecac syrup. That amount was enough to cause chronic nausea, vomiting, and extreme fatigue. Sarah could only manage to whisper, "Oh my goodness." "How long was he doing this?" she asked. "For 3 months, from November all the way to February," I replied. "Every single morning he would make my coffee and add a dose of poison. I just thought I was getting sick. The doctors were never able to find the cause. All this time, Jake was just making me weaker. He wanted me to be too tired to fight back when he tried to take the restaurant." Sarah then showed me the emails between Jake and Marcus. I saw the words that were burned into my mind. "Make sure she is weak enough to sign." Then I saw another one. "The Ipecac is working. She is losing weight and has no energy." Their plan was to move $2.8 million to an offshore account right after I signed. She put the papers down and looked at me, her eyes filled with rage. "This is attempted murder," she said firmly. "Poisoning someone to force them to do something is aggravated assault at the very least." "This could be seen as attempted murder," she stated, pointing to an email from Marcus. "Marcus Brennan would be an accomplice. We are talking about conspiracy and financial abuse. They could both face serious jail time." "That is not all," I replied, handing her the fake divorce papers. I also presented a business valuation for $2.8 million. Then I gave her the false fertility clinic reports Jake showed my sister Maya. He actually had a vasectomy 5 years earlier. I also provided pictures of Jake and Maya at different hotels and restaurants. Sarah reviewed every piece of evidence carefully, writing down notes. After she was done, she took a deep, slow breath. In my 10 years on the force, I have never seen a case of fraud and abuse with this much documentation, she told me. We have lab results, emails, bank records, and photos. Should I go and arrest Jake right now? She asked. I shook my head. Benjamin said the proof is strong but not direct, I explained. The lab found poison in the coffee but cannot prove Jake put it there. The emails show Marcus wanted the restaurant, but not that Jake forced me. If we tried to arrest him now, his lawyer could easily create doubt. I leaned in closer. I need something undeniable. I need a video of Jake poisoning my coffee or a recording of him admitting everything. Sarah nodded, understanding the situation perfectly. So we need to set a trap, she said. You will install hidden cameras in your house, especially in the kitchen. Oregon law lets you record conversations without him knowing. It is perfectly legal to record inside your own home. You will need to get him to talk, ask clever questions to make him feel comfortable enough to confess to what he did. She looked at the papers one last time. What should we do about Marcus and your sister? A sick feeling grew in my stomach when I thought of them. We will have them followed. We will document every meeting, Sarah said. If you can record Jake, Marcus, and Maya planning this together, it will prove a conspiracy. 3 people working together on a crime? Will that be enough to win? I asked her. Sarah held my hand, her eyes locked on mine. We will get him, Zoe, I promise you. But you have to stay smart and be patient. If Jake finds out you know about his plan, he could become dangerous. He might panic and do something even worse. She then pulled out a business card and wrote a second number on the back. This is my personal cell phone, she told me. If you ever feel unsafe or if Jake threatens you in any way, you call 911 first. Then you call me immediately. I do not care what time it is. Do you understand? She asked. I took the card from her hand and nodded. I understand. Thank you for everything, Sarah. She offered me a small, supportive smile. You are a lot stronger than you realize, but I am glad I can help. She stood up from the booth and gathered the documents. I am going to run background checks on Marcus Brennan and his money ties to Jake. Your job is to buy the cameras, set them up, and record everything you can. When we are done, Jake Carson will be behind bars for a very long time. I sat there and watched her leave. For the first time since my world had been turned upside down, I felt a tiny spark of hope. It was Wednesday, February 28th, just before 10 at night. I was on my bed with my laptop, looking at the footage from a spy camera. I had installed it 4 days ago. The camera was tiny, smaller than a lipstick tube, and hidden in a picture frame on Jake's desk. The picture was from our wedding, where we were both smiling like we had forever. I bought it online for $89 with 2-day shipping. It records video and audio and saves it all to a secure online server. Sarah told me to record everything, and that is what I was doing. Every night, after Jake fell asleep, I would watch the day's recordings. I had to fast forward through so many hours of him just working or on the phone. Most of it was useless. But tonight, I found something. It was a recording from the day before, February 27th at 2:47 in the afternoon. I was at my restaurant, Rose's Kitchen, getting ready for dinner. The video showed Jake in his office by himself with the phone pressed to his ear. I turned up the sound. His voice was perfectly clear. Rick, my name is Jake Carson. We met at the contractor event last month. There was a short pause. I could barely hear a man's voice on the other end. Oh, right, I remember you. What's on your mind? I have a job for you, and I need you to take care of it for me, Jake said, leaning back. It's at a restaurant, Rose's Kitchen, located at 428 Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard. Okay, the man said. What kind of job is it? It is a gas line inspection, Jake said in a very smooth voice. But I need you to do something very specific for me, he continued. I need you to loosen a valve, not all the way, just enough to start a slow leak. It needs to be something that no one would notice at first. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. Finally, the man spoke. Are you serious right now? Perfectly serious, Jake said. And I will give you $5,000 in cash. No receipts, no records. This conversation stays between us. Another pause came. This one felt even longer. The man started to say, if a gas leak happens while someone is inside. That is exactly the point, Rick, Jake interrupted. His voice was so calm it was frightening, like he was just ordering dinner. I need it to happen on the night of October 28th around 8. I will make sure she is alone in the kitchen after we have closed up for the night. A cold fear spread through my whole body. She? Rick asked. Who is she? He asked. My wife, Jake said. And I need to make sure she cannot get out. I slammed my laptop shut. My hands were shaking so much that the computer almost fell off my lap. I rewound the video 10 seconds and played it again. I need to make sure she cannot get out. I watched it a third time, then a fourth. Every time I heard the words, it felt like a punch to my stomach. Jake was not just trying to steal my restaurant, he was actually planning to have me killed. He was paying a man to cause a gas leak that would blow up the building with me inside. I made myself hit the play button to hear the rest of the call. Rick's voice came back, quiet and unsure. Man, I do not know about this. That sounds really dangerous, Rick said. If someone gets killed, nobody will ever trace it back to you, Jake said, cutting him off. It will look like a terrible accident, an old building, a bad gas line, a tragic fire. The fire department will rule it an accident. My wife will be gone. As her sad husband, I will inherit the restaurant and sell it the next day. The plan is clean and simple, and you will walk away with $5,000. I'm going to need to think about this, Rick finally said. You have until March 15th to make up your mind, Jake told him. After that day, the offer is gone. Let me know. The call ended. Jake put his phone down, stretched his arms, and went back to his work like he hadn't just hired someone to murder me. I closed the laptop and the room went dark while I just stared at the wall. October 28th. That was 8 months away. For 8 months, Jake had been planning this. He lived in my house, he kissed me, he pretended to love me, all while he was setting up my own murder. I felt sick to my stomach. I ran to the bathroom and splashed my face with cold water. The woman in the mirror was a total stranger. Her face was white and her eyes looked empty, filled with terror. But under that fear, a new feeling was starting to grow. It was a hot, burning anger. For 3 months, Jake had been poisoning me. He had faked my signature on documents. He had plotted with Marcus Brennan to steal the business my grandmother built. He had been with my own sister. And now he was planning to have me killed. He wanted me erased. He wanted to wipe me off the earth so he could take everything and start over with Maya. My hands gripped the sink and I could barely breathe. No, I whispered at my own reflection, I will not let you do this. I went back to the bedroom and opened the laptop. I immediately made 3 copies of that video file. I put the first copy on my phone. I saved the second copy to a flash drive and hid it in my purse. The third copy I sent to a secret email account. Then I sent a text message to Sarah. I have the proof. Can we meet tomorrow morning? It is an emergency. She replied in less than a minute. 7 in the morning at my office. What happened? I paused for a second, then typed, Jake hired someone to kill me. I have the whole conversation recorded on video. The 3 dots appeared as she typed her reply. Oh my God, Zoe, are you safe right now? Yes, I replied. He is sleeping. I am fine. Lock your bedroom door. Do not let him come in. I will see you at 7 o'clock, she confirmed. I got out of bed and made sure the door was locked. Then I sat back down to watch the video one last time. October 28th. He had chosen the date, the weapon, and the place. But he made one huge mistake. He had no idea I was watching every single thing he did. He did not know I was recording his every word. And now I had the proof. This was clear, solid evidence that Jake Carson tried to hire someone to kill me. Tomorrow I will give it to Sarah and we will stop him together. But for now, I sat in the silence, hearing my husband breathing in the next room, and I realized something important. I was not afraid anymore. I am ready. The day he has planned is 8 months away. But my husband Jake does not know that I'm aware of everything. By the time he understands what is going on, it will be all over for him. It was Tuesday, March 5th, a little after 4 in the afternoon. I walked into Anderson Investigations, an office on Southwest Morrison Street in downtown Portland. The room smelled strongly of old coffee and cigarettes, ignoring the no smoking sign on the wall. A man in his 50s with short gray hair sat at a messy desk, buried under files and coffee cups. He looked up as I came in. Are you Zoe Martinez? He asked. I told him I was. Tom Anderson, he said, standing to shake my hand firmly. Please, have a seat. I sat down across from him, clutching my purse on my lap. I had hired Tom 5 days earlier, right after I showed the video to Sarah. The recording clearly captured Jake paying Rick Donovan to end my life. Sarah began an official investigation, got a warrant, and advised me to stay quiet. But I could not just wait around. I needed more answers. I had to know why Jake was doing this, and I needed to find out how deeply my sister Maya was involved. That is why I hired Tom. I told him to follow both Jake and Maya, to note everything they did, and to figure out their plans. He slid a thick yellow folder across the desk to me. Here is the first report, Tom said. I have watched them for 5 days. They are not trying to be careful. I opened the folder. The front page was a summary, and behind it were many pages of pictures. There were so many photos. I saw Jake and Maya getting a room at the Marriott Downtown Hotel. I saw them at a small table at Clyde Common, holding hands. I saw them in a Fred Meyer parking lot, kissing with passion. A cold knot formed in my stomach, but I continued to look. They see each other 3 times a week, Tom said, leaning back. It is always at the Marriott. It is always between 2 and 5 in the afternoon while you are at work. They check in under a fake name, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, and Jake uses cash every time. I nodded, my eyes glued to the pictures. What else have you discovered? Your sister has been visiting a fertility doctor, Tom said. The Portland Fertility Center on Northeast Cleon. I trailed her there twice this week. She has regular appointments on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 in the morning. I looked up, trying to process his words. A fertility clinic. She was trying to get pregnant. Tom handed me a different photograph. This one showed Maya as she left the clinic carrying a folder. From what I can tell, she began going there in January. It looks like she is very serious about having a baby. A crushing weight settled onto my chest. Maya and my husband Jake having a child of their own. Does she know that he is my husband? I asked in a very quiet voice. Tom just shrugged his shoulders. It is difficult to know for certain, but from how they act, my guess is she knows. They seem like a couple who are making big plans for their life together. She discusses a restaurant she wants to open, named Maya's Table, and he talks about them moving to Seattle. You are the only one they're hiding this from. I shut my eyes for a second and took a long, unsteady breath. What is this photo? Tom passed me one final picture. It showed Jake and Maya in the coffee shop at Powell's City of Books. Jake was showing Maya a piece of paper. She had a huge smile on her face as she read it. I took this one yesterday, Tom said. I was not close enough to read the words, but it seemed like an official form. Perhaps it was some kind of medical report. I stared at the image, a medical report. A new thought began to form in my mind. Can I look at that again? Tom gave me the photo. I used my phone to zoom in on the picture. The paper in Jake's hand had a logo at the top. It read Oregon Wellness Clinic. Below the logo, the patient's name was Jake Carson. The diagnosis was low sperm count from an old injury. The recommended treatment was testosterone therapy. The completion date was estimated to be December 2024. I felt like my heart had stopped. What do you see? Tom asked. I have to make a call, I said, grabbing my phone. I dialed Sarah's number and she picked up right away. Zoe, are you all right? I have a favor to ask, I said. I need you to look at Jake's medical history. I must know if he ever had a vasectomy. There was a short silence on the line. What makes you ask that? Because I believe he is deceiving Maya. He showed her a fake medical report about getting fertility treatments. I must know the truth. Hold on, Sarah said. I could hear her typing on a keyboard. Since this is an active criminal matter, I already have access to his files. Let me look. I waited, my heart pounding in my ears. Tom watched me with a worried expression but stayed silent. Okay, Sarah finally spoke. I have his information here. Jake Michael Carson, born April 12th, 1988. Oh my goodness, Zoe. What is it? He had a vasectomy, Sarah said, her voice slow and deliberate. It happened on August 15th, 2019. The surgery was at Oregon Health and Science University. The record says it is permanent with no reversal. 2019. That was 3 years before our wedding. This whole deception had been going on since before I even knew him. Sarah, I said, my voice shaking. He claimed he was not ready for children. He promised we would discuss it later. He was not telling you the truth, Sarah said softly. And if he gave your sister a false medical paper about his fertility, then he is lying to her as well, I realized. I ended the call, my hands trembling. Tom was still watching me. Is something wrong? He had a vasectomy, I told him. 5 years ago, he has been tricking my sister and me this whole time. I opened my laptop and went to the cloud storage where I kept all my evidence. I began to look through the text messages I had downloaded from Jake's phone 2 weeks before. And then I found it. It was a text Jake sent to Marcus Brennan on February 25th. It said, "Just give them hope, my friend. Hope is a very strong tool. Zoe will stay as long as she thinks we will have a family, and Maya will do anything I ask if she thinks she can get pregnant. It is really that easy." I read the message again and again. Tears started to fill my eyes. Jake did not love me. He did not love Maya. He was unable to love anybody. He had controlled both of us with his deceptions. He made false promises to keep us around. He was making me sick so I would be too weak to stop him from taking Rosa's kitchen. He was lying to Maya about a life together so she would help him. And his final plan was to have me killed, sell the restaurant for a lot of money, and then leave. My sister Maya was just another piece in his game, just like me, but she had no idea. I shut my laptop and looked up at Tom. Can you continue to follow them? As long as you pay me, I will not let them out of my sight. Good, I replied. I need you to record everything. I want photos, conversations, places, times, every single detail. I understand perfectly. I left his office with the folder in my possession, feeling completely hollow inside. Jake was only motivated by greed, power, and being in charge, and Maya, my own sister, whose hair I used to brush and to whom I read stories at night, was just one more person for him to use. One part of me wanted to warn her, to let her know she was being played, but the other part, the one that saw her with my husband, heard her talking about her own restaurant and knew she texted him about his baby that could never exist. That part of me felt she had to learn this lesson on her own. Jake had tricked us both, but I was now the only one who knew the entire story, and I would use that story to my benefit. 7.5 months had passed since I had seen the video. It was 7 months since I showed Detective Sarah Morgan the recording of Jake planning my death inside Rose's kitchen. It had been 7 months of slow, methodical planning. We created a very detailed plan after I gave Sarah the tape in March. Sarah wanted to take Jake into custody right away, but I convinced her to hold off. A fast arrest would let him get a lawyer and claim it was all just talk. Instead of acting now, we could wait and let him believe his scheme was a success, then catch him red-handed. Conspiracy and attempted murder charges would ensure he was trapped, so we were patient. Sarah went to work securing the necessary warrants. She found Rick Donovan and spoke with him in private. He confessed to the entire plot. Jake had paid him $5,000 in cash to tamper with the gas line in my restaurant. Rick's only task was to cause the damage 3 days prior to October 28th and then vanish. Jake's plan was for me to be working alone in the kitchen. Gas would slowly fill the entire room. The moment I lit the stove, the place would explode. It would be a horrible, tragic accident. The grieving widow then sells the restaurant and disappears with all the money. But I was aware of his whole twisted scheme. Now, with his cruel deadline just 3 days away, it was my turn to make a move. On Friday, October 25th, shortly after 2 in the afternoon, I stood in my kitchen holding my phone. Oregon Natural Gas, Brenda is speaking. How may I help you? I made my voice steady and said, Hello, my name is Zoe from Rosa's Kitchen. I believe we might have a gas leak. I have noticed a smell near the stove for a couple of days. All right, ma'am, we handle these situations with the highest priority. I am dispatching a technician to you immediately. Could you please verify the address? 428 Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard in Portland. That is correct. We will have someone there in under 60 minutes. Please do not use any matches or lighters. If the smell becomes stronger, you must evacuate the building. I understand and thank you. After ending the call, I waited. Roughly 50 minutes later, a white van from the gas company pulled up. A man in a blue uniform and a hard hat got out, carrying his tools and a detection device. I went to the door to meet him. Hi, I am Zoe Martinez. I am the owner who called you. Eddie Parker, he replied, shaking my hand. Let us figure out what is happening. I showed him the way to the kitchen, where he right away began using his equipment to inspect the area around the stove. After a minute, his expression changed. Ma'am, you did the right thing by calling us about this valve. He gestured to a brass fitting on the gas line behind the stove. This has been intentionally loosened. It was not enough to create an immediate leak, but the stove's heat would have caused gas to pour out. This could have led to a massive explosion. A wave of sickness hit my stomach, but I kept my expression completely blank. Can you fix it? Yes, absolutely. I will tighten it right now and then inspect your whole system. I will make sure everything is perfectly safe. For the next 20 minutes, he carefully tightened fittings, checked all the pipes, and scanned every inch of the line with his detector. At last, he stood up straight. Okay, you are all set. Everything is secure. I am not detecting any leaks at all. But I have to ask, do you have any idea how that valve came loose? That kind of thing does not happen on its own. I took a slow, deliberate breath. I am not certain. Perhaps something just fell and hit it. He shot me a doubtful glance, but did not press me for another explanation. Okay, well, it is completely safe now. He continued, I am required to file a report about this with my main office. Actually, I interrupted, pulling $500 in cash from my wallet. I was hoping you could help me with something. My husband worries a lot about things like this. If he learns that I called the gas company, he will say I am being paranoid, and we will get into a huge argument. Is there any way you could not file the report just as a personal favor? This is for your trouble. Eddie stared at the money in my hand, and then he looked up at my face. Mom, company policy requires me to report every single service call. I understand, I said, but you fixed the problem. Everything is safe now. I would really just prefer to avoid a fight with my husband. He considered it for a moment, then took the cash and slipped it into his pocket. All right, but you must call us immediately if you smell gas again. Do you understand me? I will. Thank you so much. After he left, I locked the door behind him and exhaled deeply. The first part was complete. The gas line was secure, but Jake and Rick were totally unaware. They believed their lethal trap was set. Even so, I needed an insurance policy. I had to have my own way to control the gas. I picked up my phone to place another call. Walsh Gas Consulting, this is David speaking. Hello, David. My name is Zoe Martinez. I require a remote shutoff valve to be installed on a commercial gas line, and it has to be done today. The cost is not an issue. My schedule is full today, but I believe I can fit you in around 6 o'clock this evening. What is your address? Promptly at 6 o'clock, a plain work truck parked outside and David Walsh stepped out. He was an older gentleman with gray hair, dressed in jeans and a flannel shirt. My friend Sarah had assured me he was both dependable and discreet. I let him in through the rear entrance. Show me the gas line, was all he said. I brought him into the kitchen. He carefully examined the main valve, the fittings, and all the connected pipes. So you want the remote valve installed on this particular section? Yes, I need the ability to shut off the gas from any location, simply by using my phone. He gave me a look full of curiosity. Are you experiencing some kind of problem here? Let us just say that I require complete control over what occurs on my property. He gave a slow nod. I understand. I can install a smart valve that is connected to a cellular signal. You will be able to manage it with an application on your phone. The work will require about 2 hours. The total cost will be $1,200. Perfect. David worked in a quiet and focused manner. He fitted a small valve behind the stove, wired it to a control unit, and then linked that unit to an app on my phone. Once he was done, he took out his own phone. Download this application, GasSafe Pro. I have already configured your valve with it. Do you see this button? I glanced down and saw a large red button on the screen labeled Emergency Shutoff. If you press that, the valve will close instantly. The flow of gas will stop completely. Your stove will not light. Nothing will work. And how do I turn it back on? You can press the green button, but it is always much safer to reactivate it manually at the valve itself. That is wonderful. I gave him the $1,200 in cash. He accepted the money, gave me a brief nod, and departed without saying anything else. I stood alone in the silent kitchen, looking at the app on my phone. A single button gave me total power. I needed to see it work. I pressed the red button. I heard the distinct click of the valve closing. I pressed the green button. It clicked back open. I repeated this 3 more times just to be absolutely sure. Then I went online and ordered a handheld gas detector with 2-day delivery. I put my phone in my pocket. The restaurant was finally safe. I was the one controlling the gas now, and Jake had no idea what was coming. I walked over to the front window and gazed out at the street. The sun was going down, creating long orange shadows. In only 3 days, Jake would come through that door, fully expecting me to be gone. He would anticipate a fiery blast. He would be planning to inherit my entire life and just walk away, but he was terribly wrong. October 28th was not going to be the day I lost my life. It was going to be the day that Jake Carson's entire world fell apart around him, and I was the one who was going to light the fuse. On Sunday evening, October 27th, I sat by myself in the restaurant's office. I gripped my phone tightly, my stomach churning with anxiety. Tomorrow was the big day, the day Jake had scheduled for my murder, the day I would finally end this nightmare. The restaurant is always closed on Sundays, leaving the dining area completely dark and still. The only noises were the faint hum of the kitchen refrigerator and the soft ticking of a clock that my grandmother had hung on the wall 30 years ago. A storm had rolled in and rain was now beating against the windows like countless tiny drums. I launched the Text Now application on my phone. I had downloaded it the previous day to obtain a disposable phone number that was untraceable. I had been using that number to speak with Sarah without Jake knowing. But tonight, I had another purpose for it. I was about to use it to lay a trap for my own sister. I stared at the empty message field, my thumb paused just above the screen, ready to begin. This was the moment. This was the way I would lure Maya into my plan. A small, foolish part of my heart wanted to phone her. It wanted to offer her one final opportunity to escape, to explain that Jake was only using her, that he would discard her as soon as she was no longer useful. I wanted to yell at her about his secret surgery, the falsified doctor's notes, and the messages where he mocked her desire to have a child, but I knew I could not. Maya had made her decision. She had chosen Jake. She had chosen to be with my husband. She had chosen to help him take Rosa's kitchen away from our family, and tomorrow she would at last have to answer for that decision. I drew in one long, unsteady breath and began to write. The message needed to sound exactly like it came from Jake. It had to have his unique mix of confidence and enthusiasm. I had been analyzing his texts for months. I understood his style. I wrote, Babe, Zoe is hosting a surprise anniversary party for me tomorrow. October 28th at 8 o'clock at night at the restaurant. She is desperate to get me back. She even invited my mom and friends to pressure me. This works perfectly for us. With everyone there, the accident will look completely believable. No one will ever suspect a thing. Just arrive like a normal guest. Be nice to Zoe. When it happens, after they go home around 10, we will both have solid alibis. Do not send a reply. Zoe is watching everything I do. Just trust me, my love. We will finally be free after tomorrow. I love you. I reread the message 4 times, making sure each word was perfect. The story needed to sound completely believable. I had to be sure Maya would accept it. Then I pressed send. The message was delivered. I put my phone down and just looked at it, my heart racing. What if she did not buy the lie? What if she called Jake? What if she chose not to come? I glanced at the clock. It was 7:34 at night. I waited for a minute, then 2 minutes, then 5. My phone vibrated. I snatched it up so quickly I nearly fumbled it. It was a text from Maya. Okay, baby, I will be there. It will all be ours tomorrow, right? Her words felt like a tiny crack in my heart. It will all be ours. She really believed him. She was sure Jake loved her. She thought he would leave me for her. They would launch their perfect restaurant, Maya's Table. They planned to use the money from my family's business to fund their new life. She didn't know Jake had a procedure 5 years ago that made him unable to have children. She didn't know he was lying about wanting a family with her. She was blind to the fact he would leave her the moment he got what he wanted. He would leave her with absolutely nothing. Even worse, he would pin the entire crime on her. I typed out a response, still pretending to be Jake. We will have it all, baby, I promise. I will see you then. Wear something pretty. And do not forget to act shocked when you get there. Her answer was immediate. I will. I love you. I closed the conversation, deleted the entire chat, and erased the phone's data. I sat alone in the dark office, staring into space, feeling hollow inside. I did not feel clever or victorious. All I felt was a deep, crushing sadness. Because tomorrow Maya would arrive at Rose's kitchen thinking her life was about to begin. Instead, her whole world was going to shatter. But I could not let that deter me. Not at this point. Not after all Jake had done to me. I got to my feet, put the phone in my pocket, and went to the window. The rain continued to fall, blurring the headlights on Hawthorne Boulevard. Somewhere out there, Jake was probably at his house, texting Maya. He was likely polishing his story for the police about his wife's tragic accident. And somewhere else, Maya was feeling happy, believing she had won. But tomorrow they would both discover the truth. The stage was set for tomorrow. I turned away from the window, locked the office, and went home. My plan was completely ready. I had complete control over the gas supply. The proof was stored securely in 3 separate locations. My friend Sarah was aware of every single detail. The guests were all invited, and Maya had just confirmed her attendance. Tomorrow evening, October 28th at 8 o'clock, everyone I needed would be inside that restaurant. And by the time I was finished, Jake Carson and Maya Martinez would both be in handcuffs. Everything was in place. Tomorrow it would all finally end. I woke up at precisely 6 o'clock on Monday morning, October 28th, and grabbed my phone. I did not need an alarm clock. I did not need any sleep. I had only gotten 2 hours of it anyway. Today was the last day. I opened my gas control application and pressed the large red button for an emergency stop. 2 miles away, a valve at Rose's kitchen clicked shut and locked. There would be no gas leak. There would be no explosion. There would be no tragic accident. Jake's wicked plan was officially finished. I got dressed in the darkness, pulling on black jeans and a gray sweater. I neatly folded my grandmother's apron and put it into my bag. I drove along the quiet, rain-slicked streets of Portland until I arrived at Rose's kitchen. I used my key for the back door and went inside. The restaurant was still and cold. The air held the faint scent of spices, like the memories of past dinners. I flipped on the lights, tied my grandmother's apron around my waist, and began to work. I was not just making a meal today, I was building my case against him. There would be 7 courses to stand for 7 sins. These 7 pieces of proof would completely ruin Jake Carson. They would strip him of everything he had tried to take from me. I began with the menu. I wrote it in chalk on a board that would be shown in the dining area. Course 1, bitter coffee for the poison. Course 2, the forged contract for the deception. Course 3, broken promises for all his lies about wanting children. Course 4, the betrayal for his secret affair. Course 5, the murder plot for the gas leak scheme. Course 6, ambition for his greed and his plans for Maya's table. And Course 7, the truth for the final justice. I took a step back to look at my work. It was flawless, it was straightforward, cold, and exactly what the moment called for. Then I started preparing the food. The first course was very simple. I brewed a pot of coffee that was dark, bitter, and incredibly strong. I poured just 1 cup and put it on a tray. Beside the cup, I laid a printed report from the medical laboratory. It read, Ipecac syrup detected, 15 milliliters per 250 milliliter sample. This was the poison Jake had been serving me every morning for 3 months. This was his way of slowly trying to destroy me. The second course was a light salad. It had crisp greens, a tart vinegar dressing, and cheese. I served it on a plate made of clear glass. The fake business contract was laid directly beneath it. You could easily see my forged signature. The sale price was $2.8 million. Marcus Brennan's name was printed clearly at the bottom. The third course was salmon with a lemon sauce. It appeared lovely and delicate, but it tasted bitter. I placed the dish next to a printed hospital record of Jake's vasectomy. The date on the document was August 15, 2019. That was 3 years before he even asked me to marry him. It was 5 years before he told Maya he wanted to start a family with her. The fourth course was roasted lamb with herbs and garlic. I served it alongside a stack of printed text messages between Jake and Maya. One of them read, I love you, baby. After this is done, we will have it all. Maya's table is set to open next spring. An entire 18 months of their deception was served up like a main dish. Course 5 was the most difficult to make. I prepared a dish my grandmother taught me, chiles en nogada. It is a poblano pepper filled with meat and spices. The pepper is covered in a white walnut sauce and sprinkled with pomegranate seeds. This dish is a true act of love that takes many hours to make. It demands a lot of patience and attention. I served it next to a printed transcript from a hidden camera recording. Jake's voice was captured perfectly. He said, I just need you to open the valve enough to create a slow leak. I will make sure she is the only person in the kitchen. Then you can hear the voice of Rick Donovan. He said, if somebody dies, Jake, they will have no way to connect it back to you. Course 6 was a tres leches cake for dessert. It was my grandmother's own recipe. She showed me how to make it when I was just 8 years old. I set a slice of it beside a printed email from Marcus Brennan to Jake. It said, as soon as the power of attorney is signed, we can close the sale of Rose's Kitchen. Wire the $2.8 million and you can begin your new life with M in Seattle. Maya's table will be ready by the third quarter of 2025. The seventh and last course was only a single square of dark chocolate on a spotless white plate. There was nothing else with it. It stood for the simple, harsh truth. I used the whole morning to set up and photograph each dish. I needed to have backup copies of all the evidence just in case. At noon, Carmen Foster showed up with a van loaded with restaurant gear. She unloaded electric warmers, serving trays, and extra plates. She had even prepared some of the food at her own restaurant to support me. Other than Sarah, Carmen was the only one who knew what was truly planned for tonight. Are you prepared for this? She asked me. She placed a tray of warm empanadas on the kitchen counter. I have been prepared since February, I told her. She just nodded her head and did not say another word. That is one of the many things I admire about her. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, every single dish was ready. I covered each one and put them in the walk-in refrigerator. After that, I went into the dining room. I put a large decorative screen at the front of the area. I set up a projector on a small table and plugged in my laptop. I reviewed the presentation I had created the week before. It showed crime scene photos, email chains, and financial records. It also had the video of Jake meeting with Rick Donovan. It was all the proof required to finally bring him down. At 3 o'clock, Sarah Morgan stopped by. She was off duty, wearing regular jeans and a jacket, but I could still notice her police badge clipped to her belt. Are you all right? She asked. I am fine. Jake has no idea what is about to hit him. She nodded. I will arrive at 7:45. I am going to sit at a table in the back and pretend to be a regular guest. If there are any issues, I will only be 2 seconds away. Nothing is going to go wrong, I promised her. She studied my face for a moment, then she gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze. Your grandmother would be incredibly proud of the woman you are. I was too overcome with emotion to say anything, so I simply nodded. At 5 o'clock, I began arranging the tables. I set up 15 places, complete with white linens, candles, and name cards. I put Jake's card at the most important seat of the main table. Maya's was to his right, and Marcus Brennan's was to his left. I put my own seat at the opposite end of the table, facing him. It was the position of power. At 6 o'clock, I put up the chalkboard menu. The menu planned 7 courses for 7 sins. At 6:30, I put on a simple black dress. I wore my hair up with the silver earrings from my grandmother. I saw a stranger when I looked in the mirror. She seemed much older, stronger, and completely ready. At 7 o'clock, I lit the candles. The dining room filled with a soft, warm glow. It looked like a beautiful painting, but was a beautiful trap. From the doorway, I took one last survey of the room: the tables, projector, evidence, and food. I had all I needed to finally stop this nightmare. My phone buzzed with a message from Jake. I am on my way. See you soon, baby. I did not answer. Then another message came from Maya. I am almost there. I am nervous but also excited. I gave a cold, small smile. She had good reason to feel nervous. At 7:30, I opened a bottle of wine. I poured a glass that I would not touch. I just held it and felt its weight in my hand. Everything was in its perfect place. The dinner party was ready to begin, and Jake did not know he was the main course tonight. Before I share what happened on October 28th, the evening justice was served. Type truth below. That way I know you are ready. What comes next is a complete shock. One small thing. I have changed a few details for clarity. If difficult stories bother you, this might be your time to step away. Rose's kitchen was softly lit by 2 dozen candles. The flames danced in the October wind from an open window. I stood near the host's station. For this night, I wore a deep burgundy dress. The dress was designed to look elegant and confident. It was the dress of a woman who knows her own power. The air smelled of roasted garlic and fresh basil. I also smelled sweet caramelized onions coming from the kitchen. I had just worked for 3 hours on a 5 course meal no one would forget. My hands were completely steady. I smoothed the white linen tablecloth one final time. I straightened the single red rose in its vase. I glanced at my phone. The time showed 7:58 in the evening. In 2 minutes, my first guest would arrive. The trap I had set for 8 months was about to spring. The door swung open at precisely 8:05. Jake entered. His wide shoulders seemed to take up the entire doorway. His smile was warm and familiar, but it was all a lie. He wore the charcoal gray suit I gave him for our first anniversary. He often said that it made him feel powerful. He walked over and pulled me into an embrace. He kissed my forehead with the same fake love he had on our wedding day. Happy anniversary, sweetheart, he whispered into my hair. His voice was quiet and intimate. I made myself smile and leaned into his arms. I had to be the loving wife just one more time. My fingers found my phone, where the remote gas shut-off app was open in my pocket. Maya showed up at 8:10 in the evening. Her red hair was styled in a classic knot. Her emerald green dress was picked to get Jake's attention. She stopped in the entryway, faking her surprise. "Zoe, you told me to come," she said. Her voice was light, like we were just old friends. "I was only going to stop by to say hello." I smiled at her, but there was no warmth in it. "Of course, I invited you, Maya. You are part of the family." Her eyes quickly glanced at Jake before looking away. At 8:15, Marcus Brennan walked in. His silver hair was styled perfectly. He wore a flawless navy blue suit. He firmly shook Jake's hand, like a longtime business partner. "Jake, it is great to see you," Marcus said smoothly, patting his shoulder. "Zoe, I appreciate the invitation. Your grandmother's restaurant is a landmark." I simply gave a polite nod. I saw Jake's smile get a little tighter. His eyes tracked Marcus to his chair with the intense gaze of a predator watching a threat. Jake's mother, Linda Carson, came in at 8:20. Her silver hair was styled in soft waves. She wore a lavender blouse and a pearl necklace, looking like a woman of perfect grace. She gave me a warm hug, and her signature floral perfume surrounded me. "My dear daughter-in-law," she said with true affection, "I am so proud of both of you. 2 years have gone by. Time moves so fast when you are in love." I hugged her a little too tightly, feeling bad because she did not know what her son did. At 8:25 in the evening, Detective Sarah Morgan came in a simple black blazer and jeans, her badge hidden in her purse. She hugged me and gave me a knowing look. "Zoe, it has been a while," she said loudly so everyone could hear. "I am so happy you asked me to celebrate with you." I gave her hand a quick squeeze, a secret sign that she was here as a witness, not a guest. In the next 15 minutes, the last 10 guests came, one after another. My Aunt Carmen got there at 8:28 in the evening, still in her nurse's uniform from her job at Providence Hospital. My cousin Mateo and his wife Isabella arrived at 8:32 in the evening. Their 2-year-old daughter Anna was asleep in her mother's arms. Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, an old couple and regulars at Rosa's kitchen for 20 years, arrived at 8:36, bringing wine and warm smiles. Father Miguel from Our Lady of Sorrows, who married Jake and me, came at 8:40. He brought a blessing for our marriage and a prayer book. Jenny, my best friend from cooking school, arrived at 8:43 in the evening. She had her camera around her neck, as always. Finally, my lawyer, Benjamin Hartley, got there at 8:47 in the evening. His quiet presence was a promise that tonight's words would be recorded and binding. By 8:50 in the evening, all 15 guests were at the long dining room table, their faces lit by the candles. The sound of their talk and laughter filled the room with a false sense of normalcy. I stood at the end of the table, raised my wine glass, and waited for quiet. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I said, my voice strong and clear. 2 years ago, Jake and I promised many of you that we would love and honor each other always. Tonight, I wanted to honor that promise with our most important people. I looked for a moment at each person at the table. I saw Jake's confident smile, Maya's blank face, Marcus Brennan's polite interest, Linda Carson's proud glow, Sarah Morgan's sharp eyes, and the others. They were all waiting with no idea of the disaster that was about to hit. "I have made a very special dinner for you all this evening," I said, my voice full of warmth. "There are 5 courses, and each comes from a recipe in my grandmother Rose's book, but there is something else I need to share with you. It is a story of trust, betrayal, and what people do to keep what they love." I saw Jake's smile flicker for a moment. I saw his hand clutch his wine glass tighter, and I knew he felt that something was wrong. I put my glass down, went to the kitchen door, and pointed to the first course on the counter. It was a simple dish of heirloom tomato bruschetta with a balsamic glaze and fresh basil. "The first course is coming now," I said, turning back to my guests. "And with it comes the first part of tonight's story." I looked at Jake across the table, holding his gaze for a long, quiet moment before I smiled. "I think all of you will find it very interesting." By 8:55 that night, on October 28, 2024, all 15 guests sat at the long candlelit table in Rosa's kitchen. Their faces were bright with happiness for the celebration. I stood at the head of the table holding a silver tray, knowing the next 35 minutes would destroy every good feeling in the room. I placed a white porcelain coffee cup right in front of Jake with steam rising from it, and I spoke. "For 3 months, for 90 days in a row, my husband made me coffee every morning," I said, my voice steady and loud. "He pretended to be a kind, loving man, but he never told me that every cup had 15 milliliters of ipecac syrup, a drug that makes you violently ill." From my pocket, I took out a folded report and showed it to everyone. It was from the Providence Medical Lab, dated February 19th, 2024. It proved I was being systematically poisoned with ipecac. Jake had been making me sick on purpose, hoping I would be too weak to fight his plans. Jake's face turned white and he gripped the table hard, but I did not let him speak. I went to a laptop and put the first email up on the wall for everyone to see. "The second truth is about stealing," I said clearly. "This email is from Marcus Brennan to Jake on November 3rd, 2023. It says, 'The transfer will take 90 days after you get power of attorney. Be sure she is too sick to object.'" Then I showed Jake's reply from January 22nd, 2024. "The ipecac is doing its job. She is getting skinny and can barely work in the kitchen. We will have it all by April." I looked directly at Marcus, whose face was stiff with anger he was trying to hide. "You made an offer of $2.8 million for my family's restaurant, Mr. Brennan. You bet on the idea that I would never find out what you were doing." Marcus jumped out of his chair, but Sarah Morgan stepped forward from the doorway, her hand on her hidden badge. "Please have a seat," she said quietly. "You are not going anywhere." I pressed a button and the screen split to show 2 medical reports. "The third truth is about the lies Jake told my sister," I said, turning to look at a very confused Maya. I displayed both reports. The first was a fake fertility paper from a clinic that is not real, claiming Jake had a low sperm count. The second was his actual medical record from August 15th, 2019. It showed he had a vasectomy 5 years ago. I let the room stay quiet for a moment. "That clinic does not exist, Maya. Jake created that paper to lead you on. He could not have a child with you because he never planned to." Tears filled Maya's eyes as she looked at Jake, unable to believe it. "Is that true?" she whispered. Jake remained silent. His jaw was so tight I could see the muscle twitching. My next piece of proof was a collection of photos. There was Jake and Maya kissing, holding hands, and hugging outside a bar. I paid a private detective for these pictures from the last 6 months, I explained. My husband was cheating on me with my sister in our own home. Linda Carson gasped and put her hand over her mouth as she saw the pictures. Jacob, she said, her voice full of pain, how could you do this? Jake finally spoke, his words quiet and rushed. Mom, that is not what is happening. Zoe is making things up. I interrupted him. Am I really? I then played a recording from my computer, and Jake's voice echoed through the room. Rick, I have a job for you. Go to Rosa's kitchen and find the gas line for the stove. Loosen it just enough to create a small leak. No one will smell it, but when the stove is lit. Then a different voice answered with suspicion. Are you asking me to set up an explosion? Jake's reply was chilling. I am asking you to set up an accident. I will pay you $5,000 in cash. Do it on October 28th after 8 p.m. After the audio finished, I raised my phone to show an app that could shut off the gas remotely. The fifth truth is that he tried to kill me, I said. Jake paid Rick Donovan to rig the kitchen tonight. He planned for this place to blow up at 8 o'clock, killing me and everyone else, even his own mother. Linda fell into a chair crying and Aunt Carmen ran to her side. Jake jumped up, his face flushed with rage. I did not want anyone else harmed, he yelled. It was just supposed to be for... He trailed off, but it was too late. He had admitted it. I showed them my last bit of proof, a text message from Jake to Maya on October 1st. The sixth truth, I said, is about pure greed. Jake wrote to Maya, after Zoe is out of the picture, we can start our own restaurant, Maya's Table, for the two of us. Her response was, I am so excited, I love you. Maya hid her face in her hands and started to tremble. I placed my phone on the table, and the seventh truth, my voice was cold now, is justice. Sarah Morgan moved forward. Everyone could now see the badge on her belt. Her face was serious. Jacob Carson, you are being arrested for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and asking someone to commit arson, she stated. Marcus Brennan, you are being arrested for helping with the fraud. She took out handcuffs and put them on Jake. He did not move. His face was completely pale. Another detective, James Torres, came in and handcuffed Marcus. You have the right to stay quiet, Sarah said, telling him his rights. Anything you say can be used against you in court. I saw them take Jake away at 9:28 in the evening on October 28th, 2024. He looked completely defeated. I felt a heavy burden leave me. It was not a win, just relief that justice was done. Maya was still crying at the table. Linda Carson took my hand. Her eyes were puffy and red. Zoe, I am truly sorry, she said softly. I never knew. I gave her hand a gentle squeeze. I know, Linda. This is not your fault. The door shut behind Jake and Marcus at 9:30 in the evening. The only noise was Maya crying softly. I looked at all my guests. They were upset and sad, but every one of them was safe. It is over, I whispered to myself. It is all finally over. At 9:35 in the evening, just 5 minutes later, Detective Sarah Morgan stood in the kitchen. It was October 28th, 2024. Her badge shone as she spoke to the guests, who were still in their seats looking stunned. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah said, her voice steady and in control, tonight you saw the end of an 8-month investigation into fraud, attempted murder, and poisoning. Please stay seated while we secure the area. She looked at Jake, who was in handcuffs, and looked angry. Jacob Carson, you are facing several charges. First is attempted murder. You planned the gas leak to kill your wife and 14 other people. Second is poisoning. You gave her Ipecac syrup for 90 days starting November 15th, 2023 and ending February 14th, 2024. Third, you are charged with conspiracy to commit fraud. You used fake papers to try to steal Rose's kitchen, which is worth $2.8 million. Fourth, you are charged with asking someone to commit arson and murder. This is for hiring Rick Donovan on February 27th, 2024, and offering him $5,000 to damage the gas line. And fifth, identity fraud for making up fake medical papers from a clinic that does not exist. Sarah listed the charges calmly. Each charge seemed to hit Jake hard. His anger turned to fear. This is all a lie, Jake yelled, his voice breaking. Zoe set this whole thing up. She framed me. Sarah's face stayed the same. Mr. Carson, we have a recording of you planning the gas leak. We have emails between you and Marcus Brennan about the poison and the fraud. We also have lab results, a handwriting expert's opinion, a statement from your wife's lawyer, and a video from your own home office. She paused for a second. You framed yourself. Then she looked at Marcus, who was quiet next to Jake. His hair was messy and his nice suit was wrinkled. Marcus Brennan, you are charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, helping with an attempted murder, and racketeering. These charges are for helping Jacob Carson try to steal Rose's kitchen with fake documents and intimidation. Your emails with Mr. Carson between October 10th, 2023 and January 22nd, 2024 are proof of your intentions. Maya was shaking by the wall with tears on her face. She was not arrested, but she was very scared. Sarah went over to her and spoke in a kind but serious way. Maya Martinez, on October 27th, 2024 at 7:30 at night, you got a text message. It looked like it was from Jake. He asked you to be here as his alibi for a deadly explosion. Is that right? Maya nodded and said very quietly, yes. He said Zoe was having a party and he wanted me here. He said we could be together at last. He said it would seem like an accident and no one would find out. I thought he was just talking about a simple divorce. I did not know he was going to hurt her. Sarah watched her. Did you know he was poisoning her? Maya shook her head hard. No, I promise I did not. I knew he was with me and wanted to leave Zoe, but I never thought he would do something so terrible. Sarah took out a small recorder. Maya, I want to make you an offer. If you help the Portland police and the prosecutor completely, and if you testify against Jake Carson and Marcus Brennan, we will be more lenient with you. Any other proof you can give us about what they did will mean fewer charges and a shorter sentence. Do you understand what I am saying? Maya turned to me. Her eyes were red and she looked like she was begging. Zoe, please, she whispered. I am so sorry. I made a huge mistake. I really thought he loved me. I stood completely still with my arms crossed, my face showing no emotion. I had no words for her. At 9:42 that evening, Detective James Torres walked in through the back door. He came with two forensic technicians who were holding large black cases of equipment. Sarah, we are ready to start processing, he said. Sarah pointed to a table nearby. Bag the laptop, the coffee cup beside Mr. Carson, and Mrs. Martinez's phone with the gas control application. Also, gather the documents she gave us. I need the gas valve behind the stove photographed and taken as evidence. The engineer for the remote system has given a signed statement that confirms Rick Donovan committed sabotage. One technician started taking pictures of the table, laptop, and gas valve. The other put every item into evidence bags with labels. Torres went to Jake and took a card out of his pocket. Mr. Carson, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be held against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney before we question you and to have one present during our questions. If you are unable to afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you. If you choose to answer questions now without a lawyer, you have the right to stop at any time. Now that I have informed you of your rights, are you willing to speak with me without an attorney here? Jake only stared back at him, his jaw tight, and said nothing at all. At 9:50 that night, Sarah and Torres formally led Jake and Marcus out the front door. Maya followed them with her hands in cuffs, still weeping softly. She had already decided to cooperate and signed a document promising to be a witness. As they got to the doorway, Jake looked back at me one final time. You are going to regret this, Zoe, he threatened, his voice quiet and full of hate. You call this a win, but you've ruined everything. I held his gaze without flinching. No, Jake, I replied in a calm voice. You are the one who ruined everything. I simply made you answer for it. The door shut behind them at 9:53 in the evening, and the room became quiet and calm. Linda Carson was at the table, leaning on Aunt Carmen's shoulder and crying. Father Miguel said a soft prayer. Benjamin Hartley approached me and placed a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, Zoe, he said to me. All I could do was nod as I could not find any words. For the first time in 8 months, the terrible pressure on my chest started to go away. On December 18th, 2024, which was 7 weeks and 3 days after Jake was arrested, I was finally free. I was sitting in the first row of courtroom 412 in downtown Portland. I held my hands together in my lap and had my coat fastened against the winter air. I saw Judge Margaret Whitmore walk in, her black robe flowing behind her, her face serious and hard to interpret. The trial had gone on for 3 long weeks, from November 27th to December 16th. Today was the day for the final decision. The courtroom was packed. Reporters from the local newspapers were in the back rows holding their pens. My attorney, Benjamin Hartley, sat next to me with his briefcase on the ground. A few rows back were Detectives Sarah Morgan and James Torres, but Jake's mother, Linda Carson, was not there. She had cut ties with him in a public notice on November 30th. Judge Whitmore put on her glasses and faced the three people on trial. This court is now ready to give the sentences for Jacob Michael Carson, Marcus James Brennan, and Maya Elena Martinez, she announced with a strong voice. Mr. Carson, will you please stand? Jake got up from his chair. His orange prison jumpsuit was a stark change from his usual designer clothes. His face looked pale and thin after spending 2 months in jail. Judge Whitmore stared down from her elevated seat. Jacob Michael Carson, a jury has declared you guilty on several counts. These counts include the attempt of first degree murder and severe assault by poisoning. You are also guilty of conspiracy for fraud, hiring an arsonist, and identity theft. The proof against you was overwhelming. We had phone recordings, emails, and reports about the poison. We looked at fake documents and heard from many witnesses, which included Maya Martinez. It is very clear you planned for months to poison your wife, take over her business, and then murder her. You organized an explosion that would have also killed 14 innocent people. The judge stopped for a moment, letting her words settle in the silent courtroom. This court considers your actions some of the worst cases of domestic violence and financial abuse we have ever witnessed. You showed a total lack of concern for human life. For these crimes, your sentence will be 12 years in the Oregon State Penitentiary. You will not be considered for parole during the first 8 years. After your release, you will be on supervised probation for 5 years. You are also being ordered to pay $500,000 to Mrs. Zoe Martinez. This will come from selling your possessions, which includes your vehicle and all of your investments. All of your rights to Rose's Kitchen are now officially revoked, and full ownership goes back to Mrs. Martinez. Jake's attorney started to talk about an appeal, but Jake did not say a word. His shoulders fell as a guard took him away. After that, Judge Whitmore focused on Marcus. Mr. Brennan, please stand up. Marcus rose to his feet. His silver hair was neatly combed and his face showed no emotion. Marcus James Brennan, you are guilty of planning to commit fraud. You are also guilty of helping in an attempted murder. You worked with Jacob Carson to take Rose's Kitchen by illegal means. You used threats, fake documents, and you exploited Mrs. Martinez's bad health, which was a result of the poisoning. Your emails with Mr. Carson between October 2023 and January 2024 reveal how involved you were in this scheme. You are now sentenced to 8 years in the Oregon State Penitentiary. After that, you will have 3 years of supervised probation. For 15 years after you get out, you are not allowed to own or run any restaurant in Oregon. Cascade Dining Group has already ended your job and cut all connections with you. The court would like to mention that the company was a great help during this investigation. At last, the judge looked over at Maya. She was sitting with her hands joined together and her red hair was tied back. Her eyes were puffy and red. Miss Martinez, please stand. Maya got up shakily, and her lawyer put a hand on her arm to support her. Maya Elena Martinez, you have admitted guilt to being an accessory and to interfering with justice. The court recognizes that you cooperated fully with the police starting on the night of October 28th. Your testimony against both Mr. Carson and Mr. Brennan was crucial. We also believe that you did not know about the full deadly details of Mr. Carson's plot. Still, you had an affair with your sister's husband. You took money from their unlawful acts, and you said you would create an alibi for what you thought was a small accident. This shows very poor judgment and a lack of morals. Your sentence is 2 years of supervised probation. You also have to do 400 hours of community service in the first 12 months. You must go to required counseling sessions 2 times a month for your whole probation. You are not allowed to have any contact with Mrs. Zoe Martinez unless she gives you her permission in writing. Maya nodded, and with tears falling down her cheeks, she quietly said, "Thank you, Your Honor." When the judge's hammer struck, people started leaving the courtroom. I stayed in my chair for a little while, looking at the empty judge's bench. Even though I had won, I felt a huge emptiness inside. Sarah came and took the seat next to me. "Zoe, you did it," she said in a low voice. "Justice has been done. Now you can finally begin to heal." I slowly moved my head up and down. "I know, but it doesn't feel the way I imagined." She squeezed my shoulder softly. "It never does. The important thing is that you got through it." As we got up to go, Benjamin gave me a closed envelope. "This arrived for you yesterday," he said. "It is from Maya." I did not open it until I was home in my own apartment that evening. There was a handwritten note inside. "Zoe, I know that I do not deserve to be forgiven. I was naive, selfish, and could not see the truth. I will have to live with my actions for my whole life. I am so very sorry." I folded the letter and stored it away and did not reply. Jake was in jail. Marcus's professional life was ruined. Maya had lost her family. I had my restaurant back. I was no longer in danger and I received justice. But I also lost the sister I thought I had. I lost the marriage I once loved. And I lost the ability to believe that the people I cared about would not try to ruin me. The sun appeared over the ocean at 6:15 in the morning on May 15th, 2025. It made the sands of Cannon Beach glow as I walked near Haystack Rock. I held my grandmother Rosa's old recipe book tightly against me. The leather on its cover was worn down from many years of use. Its pages had stains from flour and spices, showing the story of the woman who showed me that cooking was more than just about meals. It was about being strong. It was about putting love into something, even when life tries to strip everything from you. It was 4:30 that Sunday morning when I woke up. A powerful urge pulled me to this spot, a 90-minute drive from Portland. My grandmother Rosa brought me here as a child whenever I was hurting. She would hold my hand, look at the ocean, and say, "The water washes everything clean. No matter how bad the pain, the waves return and life continues." It was 6 months since a judge gave Jake 12 years and Marcus Brennan 8. 6 months since Maya got 2 years of probation for her testimony. 6 months since I left that courtroom feeling empty, doubting if justice could ever repair my shattered trust. But I did what Rosa taught me. I started to rebuild. The $850,000 she left me and the $500,000 from Jake offered more than just money. It gave me the power to undo all the damage he had caused. I settled every debt for Rose's kitchen. That included the fake loans Marcus had tricked Jake into having me sign. I hired a crew to give the restaurant new walls that felt warm and welcoming. We grew from 25 seats to 40. We put in a modern kitchen to replace the one Jake destroyed. An artist painted a mural of Rosa on our back wall, her hands covered in flour, her smile lasting forever. But the biggest change was one nobody could see. In February, I created the Rosa Heritage Fund. This foundation gives grants of up to $20,000 to women leaving abusive situations. We help them start their own food service businesses. The fund offers legal aid, business coaching, and a support system of female business owners in Oregon. We gave out our first 3 grants in March. The women were opening bakeries, catering companies, and food trucks. Listening to them talk about their dreams made me cry for the first time in a long while. They were tears of hope, not sadness. We reopened Rose's Kitchen on April 8th. The new menu had my grandmother's classics and new dishes I created during the winter. My Aunt Carmen joined as my new partner. She invested her own money and her nursing experience to make our workplace a supportive one. Soon, Portland Monthly wrote an article about us. Then, the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association nominated us for Best Family Restaurant of 2025. Even with the awards, the packed dining room, and the wonderful reviews, a piece of me still felt broken. One particular wound just would not heal. A week ago, on May 8th, I was locking up the restaurant at about 9 o'clock at night. That was when I saw Maya standing on the other side of the street. She wore her red hair pulled back and had her hands in her pockets. She made no move to come closer. For 10 whole minutes, she simply stood there. Her gaze drifted over the bright windows, the happy customers, and the big mural of Rosa. Then she turned and left. The next morning, I found white roses and a note on my doorstep. It said, "Zoe, I am not asking you to forgive me. I just need you to know I am sorry for my actions every single day." I took the flowers inside and read the note many times, but I did not write back. I was not ready. Maybe I never would be. Some betrayals are too deep to ever fully forgive. That is the case even when the person who betrayed you was also a victim. The ocean washed over my feet on the shore as my phone vibrated. It was a message from a woman named Elena Ramirez. I opened it and read her words in the bright sunshine. She wrote, "My name is Elena Ramirez and I'm 29 years old. I recently left a bad marriage with my 7-year-old daughter. We have nothing left. A shelter in Portland told me about your Rosa Heritage Fund. It has been my lifelong dream to be a professional chef. I noticed on your website that you are hiring kitchen staff. I do not have much experience, but I learn very fast and I will work harder than anyone else." Her message finished with one simple question: "Would you be willing to give me a chance?" A sense of warmth and purpose grew inside me as I read her message again. I replied right away, "Eleanor, I would be honored to have you. Please come to Rosa's Kitchen this Monday at 10 in the morning. We can begin this next chapter together." After I sent the message, I looked at Haystack Rock, standing firm against the constant waves. I pictured Jake in prison, Marcus having lost everything, and Maya dealing with her choices. I thought about how they almost destroyed my life and my business. Then I thought of Elena, my Aunt Carmen, and everyone who now called Rosa's Kitchen their second home. I opened my grandmother Rosa's old recipe book to the note she wrote inside. "Don't ever let somebody steal your dreams." As I traced her writing, I could almost hear her voice telling me that life, just like the sea, always pushes forward. I had not forgiven Maya, and I suspected a part of me never would. But I was finally forgiving myself for putting my trust in those who betrayed me. I was forgiving myself for not seeing the truth that was right there. Rose's Kitchen was now far more than a place to eat. It was a safe haven. It was the living proof that women like Elena and me could survive the worst things and still create something wonderful. I made a silent vow to always guard what my grandmother started. It was not just about her cooking, it was about the hope we gave to women who needed a new beginning. The sun began to rise, painting the sky with beautiful colors. For the first time in a very long year, I felt true peace. The hurt was still there, but my life now had a powerful purpose. I put the cookbook under my arm and headed back to my car. I was ready for home, ready for Monday, and completely ready for the future. I need you to understand this. God showed me the truth 3 times before October 28th through the lab results, the secret recording, and Maya's confession. Each time I chose to act with reason instead of anger. When betrayal comes from your own family, it is the worst kind of pain. But remember, God gives us more than just the will to survive. He gives us the clarity to find our own way forward. I chose the path of legal justice instead of personal revenge. I did this not to ruin Jake and Marcus, but to stop them from ever hurting another woman. Please do not repeat my mistakes. I was too trusting and ignored all the warning signs. I believed love would be enough to protect me. Betrayal from someone you love does not come with a loud alarm. It enters quietly through something as small as a coffee cup or a faked signature. It hides behind the friendly smile of someone who uses a pet name for you while planning your downfall. If you have a gut feeling that something is not right, please listen to it. Your intuition is your protector. The second you ignore that little voice, you leave yourself open to being hurt. So, this is my advice: guard your finances, keep records of everything, and never let love make you forget to protect yourself. Revenge might feel good for a little while, but real justice is what helps you sleep at night. It is seeing the truth win in a courtroom. Most of all, when your world is broken by those you love, rebuilding is not about forgetting. It is about turning your pain into your purpose. Rosa's kitchen does not just serve food anymore, it now serves hope. And I truly believe that was God's purpose for me all along. If any part of my story touched you, I would be so grateful if you left a comment about your own experience with betrayal. Please subscribe for more true stories about resilience and share this video with anyone who needs to know they can overcome this. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. Your time is a true gift. Please note, the stories on this channel may include some fictional details for teaching purposes. If you are interested in a different type of story, please feel free to look at the other videos available on our channel. Stay safe, stay strong, and never forget, you are not as alone as the betrayal makes you believe.